But yeah, I mean, obviously, we want to talk today about, I want to talk about Kentico and content, because obviously they're two different things now. So I want to know what happened there.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think, not a lot of people know the story with what happened there. In fact, why don't we start there? Kentico is the original company, and that's the vendor. And currently we've got Kentico and Kontent, content.ai, the website, as two different entities, right? Yes. So can you explain how that all happened?
Yeah, probably really quick for the people that don't know me. Bart Omlo, I'm currently managing the Content by Kentico division. And Content by Kentico, or Content, is one of the two products that Kentico currently has. We have Experience and we have Content. And I joined in 2015, and at the time I joined, it was still one product. Or actually there were two, it was a little bit in the process. Yeah, so when I joined in 2015, so we had one product. Let me start a little bit from the beginning. That's the easiest. So in 2004, when Kentico started, obviously customers were looking for a CMS, and it was a .NET CMS product. And that product evolved over time to, let's say, be a leading DXP for the mid-market. So an integrated platform with commerce, with online marketing, and with CMS based on .NET platform. But we also realized as Kentico that the market was shifting. The market was shifting to more that Mac approach, to the microservices API first approach. And I think in 2014, just before I joined Kentico, we actually started with an innovation project, because at that time we believed that obviously we need to do something from scratch. Because if you try to grab an existing product that already evolved over time, and we definitely see some vendors doing that, and try to unravel that and create some kind of a headless system, that was not the approach that Kentico at that time took. So we decided to build a product from scratch. And I think in roughly 2016, we launched that product in the market. Don't get me wrong if I'm not exactly right on the timings, but we launched the product initially as Kentico Cloud. But it was already a from scratch built headless CMS. But it was, like you could say, a bit of an innovation project. We put it in the market. Obviously, the DXP was the full flagship. And you saw that the whole organization was, in a sense, built to sell and develop both products. But what you then also saw over time, that where Kentico Experience, at that time still Kentico EMS, was really focusing on the mid-market, you saw that the first market that was adopting headless CMS was the enterprise market. And our product was also really built for the enterprise market. That was one of our focuses at the start, that we said, well, we don't want to create some kind of a technical tool to solve a content problem, but we want to try to build, let's say, a new generation content management system that would actually help to solve, let's say, content challenges for larger organizations. Mm-hmm. So you actually saw those two products diverting a little bit in direction and product and marketing and strategy. So in 2020, we actually decided to separate them pretty strict. So we created two product divisions in Kentico. One was Kentico EMS, later transformed into Kentico Experience. And the other one was the division Content, really to leverage the content product. And so you could say that from February until recent times, we actually operate almost as two independent companies with its own product, its own like marketing, sales, even our own partner landscape. So clients are either, or partners are either a partner in Experience or Content, or sometimes both. So you could see in a sense that Kentico as an organization is more stepping backwards a little bit, and the two products become, let's say, the product, the established products in their markets. And what you obviously saw when we started working with Content, that because we took the direction of that headless CMS, and we were very capable to compete with like the two strong players in the market that you had at that time, at least Contentful and Content Stack. And so it helped us to grab a good leading position in the market, which I think we still have. And currently it's just like I'm the managing director for Content. I also, when we did the split, became the managing director for Content. And you now actually see that, Content obviously moves in a little bit a different direction as where Experience is going.
Yeah.
So that's the story.
Yeah, that's an interesting story. You mentioned the Contentful Content Stack there. How do you see yourselves in comparison to those two? How do you differentiate yourselves? Your URL intrigues me, right? Content.ai. How much of a role does AI play? Talk to me about how you guys differentiate yourself.
Yeah, that's a couple of questions. Well, let me first start with how we differentiate our product.
Yes.
Because obviously, definitely when we started, I think we're pretty quickly catching up now with the big players. Although we have to be fair that Contentful is still the biggest player in the market at the moment. But we came out of a world where organizations were used to have, let's say, as I said, Contentful, one of the bigger players in the market, and with Kentico Experience, we actually saw and worked already a lot with the business users. And what we saw in the market that the traditional, at least the starting headless CMSs were really focusing on developers. So it became a very technical product. Of course, you need that strong foundation. You need a good API and scalability. And of course, you need to develop on a platform. But we also believed at the Kentico side that if you create a CMS that takes care of the content, you also need to make sure that content editors are able to work in that solution. So we really, from the start, actually tried to develop the product with those two users in mind, the technical users and the business users. So we spent a lot of time in making sure that we were adding some functionality that would make the lives of a content editor easier. Things like collaboration tools that they can really work together a little bit as they're used to in Google Docs or in like Office 365. We added functionality that would allow them to segment the content pretty well, put the permissions and languages, a lot around that whole business user experience. And we saw in the market that that's typically also where we stand out as a product. That's where we win the clients. If they look for a headless CMS, and most of the time the business organizations are driving it. You also see that a lot of the organizations are still using it to power their web channels, their online channel, their yes. mobile channels. So they also want to have some bit of a form of what you see is what you get. So we for example, added a functionality called Web Spotlight, where by keeping the headless concepts, we were still allowing content editors to create as drag and drop pages and things like that. So we really did it from the start for both groups. And I think that's what was the differentiator. And when we were transforming the name from Kentico Cloud into Content, we obviously were thinking about like what's a suitable domain for us. And you obviously content.com was already taken by another one. It's a bit of a shame, but that's just how it is. But there's so many directions that you can go, and a very obvious one was IO, Content IO. But we actually thought that, well, that again is a pretty technical, in a sense, like URL. And we actually thought like what is also standing out for the content editors is that you're helping them to manage their content in a good way. And what is a good way to help them, obviously, is especially in the content creation process and the content management process, there's a lot of artificial intelligence to really help them to create better content. So we thought, well, that's a good position, a good URL to keep. So that's also where that AI is coming from. And currently we're, for example, focusing a lot on improving content modeling capabilities. That's also part of our roadmap for the future, because a lot of organizations, and the biggest challenge with the headless CMS is that you have to create a good content model from the start. Yeah. And obviously, all the headless CMSs are pretty flexible in changing it, but it also, that part is a bit of a foundation of where you get started. So we in the beginning, and we still do that, we focus a lot on helping the companies really to create their content model. So we did things like a content modeling hub and ebooks and cheat sheets and trainings and stuff like that. But if you look a little bit further, there are also definitely options where AI can really help organizations to automate a part of that content modeling process. Like in an ideal scene, they would just throw all their content that they have, existing pages, existing structures, all those areas that they have, they throw it in the mix, and it will generate some kind of like a best practice content model, for example.
Okay, so I think you mentioned in there that, and this is definitely my view as well, that the content was one of the earlier players to start sort of catering towards content editors, marketers, non-technical people from within the platform. And you mentioned a couple of players earlier. We both mentioned a couple of players earlier. I won't mention them by name now, but I hear that from one of those players, they seem to have been slightly late with that. They seem to have been late with sort of catering to non-technical people, non-technical editors, and they're sort of now playing catch up. And they're losing a client here or there because of that, right? Have you seen that? Have you seen over the last couple of years, maybe since 2020, clients from within the headless CMS space gravitating away from sort of these traditionally pure API first players and towards more, headless CMSs that can cater to marketers?
Yeah, like I think I was almost wondering if you were asking if they move from one headless CMS to the other. Even that is happening. That's also
I was asking.
Because I would say that still, and let me elaborate a little bit on that. Still, there are a lot of more traditional players that let's say didn't take the decision to unravel their product, but they actually create and build some kind of a headless layer and try to adopt to the Mac principles in their product, unraveling it, which I on all aspects believe it's still a wrong choice. For speed, performance, scalability, and you can name it, complexity. And I see, especially in the last year, that the market is really maturing on that. So there's really clients are understanding it better, which also means that comparing apples and pears is not happening so much anymore. They know what they want, so they typically see them migrating from traditional platform, even if they call themselves hybrid or sometimes even headless. I think that what we really believe in is that you should not first motivate organizations to create the ideal content model, and then with pricing enforce them to let's say either go to a more simpler model or like to pay like crazy. And so we really believe that you should not put your pricing model around that. It's of course around metrics and scalability. And the good thing is that we actually see clients that go into those vendors that have that aggressive model. They then do a smaller project. They are calculating the total cost of ownership, and then they get scared and they again look in the market. So I think that there's still like some shifts in the market where companies are going. And one big lesson learned, that's probably another thing that we realized, is with a traditional CMS, in the past, I know it when selling that, you had these big RFPs and then they would buy a license and then deal was done and then they would go in implementation. Implementation could take a year or so. So in a sense, there's a point of no return. With headless CMS, you see, and that's also with content, that the first project is quicker. So they also use the first period, it could be even the first year sometime, as a bit of, you could say, paid proof of concept. So they already decided, they took the product, but they still have an ability to bail out or to take a step back or whatever. So that's also exactly the moment where they are testing the waters, they see if the product is good, but they also are looking at the total cost of ownership model. So there is, in that first year, there's still movement that clients go from one vendor to the other. We have a very low churn rate. I think it's really like 3 or 4%, which is very low. The ones that churn are mostly related to that. Let's say not knowing whether headless is their ideal scene. They try, test the waters, and they all go away then in the first half year, I would say. As soon as they're in and they believe in it and they believe in the product, then they will like scale on, and we believe that they will stay a long time.
Okay, that was really insightful, and I think you confirmed what I'm hearing as well through the grapevine. Bart, I'm going to mention 2 words at random, and I want you to tell me the first one comes to your mind. Mac Alliance.
Yeah. Now I need to say one word that comes to mind. Well, it's a shame that we are not in the Mac Alliance yet. Shall I say that nicely?
Yeah.
It's actually a shame for us. It's a shame even for the Mac Alliance, I believe. When the Mac Alliance started, obviously we applied, very obviously, because content completely fits to the Mac Alliance. There's no discussion about it. But the Mac Alliance principles say that you as an organization have to fully adapt to the Mac principles as an organization. Well, of course, if they look at Kentico, then they say, well, but you have a DXP, which is not applying, so you can't, you need to ditch that. And then, so we obviously try to have a bit of a conversation with the Mac Alliance saying, hey guys, just look at the content product. That's fully Mac, we apply 100% to the Mac principles from the start already. Yeah. We even have a Mac page explaining what it actually is on our website. But we tried that. We had the discussion with them. They decided to take the approach. Well, hey guys, you're Kentico. You're not fully adopting. So it is a bit how it is. I think we don't really see that it has an impact on our business or so. But the not so nice part is that we're not able to join some discussions that the Mac Alliance. So if ever we would be a separate company or whatsoever, of course we would knock on the door again, and I don't see a reason why we would not be part of the Mac Alliance. I think it's a great initiative. It's really pushing the market forward. So we're very adapting it. Yeah, but we're not a member. That's how it is.
Yeah, and I don't. I mean, I've spoken to a number of vendors, off the record about Mac Alliance, and I think everybody agrees that it's a great initiative and it's good for the industry as a whole. But it does seem to be a little bit of maybe resentment from some that they're sort of policing the term a little bit, and again, I suppose if you guys have sort of policed who can be an alliance member, and there may be some sort of some circumstances that in your case your sort of partner company at this stage, Kentico, isn't quite fitting their exact categorization, shall we say, or exact criteria, sorry. And does it now become a hindrance to other players in the space because they're not 100% matching that criteria, which is quite frankly a made up criteria by them, and wouldn't most probably, a company using content.ai is not going to be impacted by what Kentico is doing.
Of course,
right?
Not.
So at that stage, you have to sit back and ask, well, okay, what's the benefit here now for the industry that content AI cannot enter unless they sort of cut ties. There's interesting questions there to be had, basically.
But you're completely right. I'm definitely not negative about the Mac Alliance or whatsoever. I think they do exactly what you say. They do a great job. But I think one of the goals is to advocate the Mac principles in the market. And of course, a client is not buying Kentico, they buy content. And we advocate the Mac principles. So why not bring in all those companies that want to be part and want to advocate for those Mac principles? I think it's more important that when you have a member, that you then, let's say, see in their behavior that they also promote it in a good way. I would be a little bit more probably open for memberships if companies say, well, or even products like us or divisions that we want to say we'll join. And then you just on a regular basis make sure that the members that you have adhere to it, that they advocate about it, so we're fully advocates, and we'll see how it evolves. We'll see how.
Yeah, and to sort of round this off again, I think the alliance is a good thing, a net positive for the industry. But I think vendors like yourselves, the best thing you can do is keep talking about the Mac architecture as a movement.
Exactly.
And the Mac Alliance as a group is good too. But I think the Mac architecture movement is the actual bigger picture anyway.
Yeah.
So I know you're doing that. I know you've got content on Mac, and you're fully behind that Mac movement. Yeah. So that's the best thing for you guys, I would say. You mentioned your 2022 roadmap, right? So what's on the roadmap? What's coming? What can what can content.ai users expect?
Yeah, so we in general we if you look at our roadmap, there are actually three main foundations, you could say. One is what we think is a basic thing that you need to have in order is your APIs, your performance, your SDKs. Let's say your foundation of the product, your real headless CMS part. So obviously one roadmap part is really connected to that. I would almost say that's an ongoing roadmap. where we constantly look at how can we improve scalability, how can we improve the growth, what can we do to add some extra security measures, so that's one stream, continuous stream, and make sure that there is no client that should be a problem on our side. So I can't say it's like point A, B, C, but it's like that's ongoing part. Then if you look at then we have a developer side of our let's say functionality, and then we have a business side of our roadmap. Sorry. If you look at the developer part of our roadmap, where our focus is on the developer roadmap, is in a sense that we say that we need to make sure that we keep having enough depth in our product, that everything that we develop, that it's available through the API. So no matter whether it's a localization, no matter whether we come up with some kind of like collections or things around users or whatever we do, we are going to add that to the APIs that we have. So I don't think we're going to create a lot of new APIs. For example, we have management API, we have GraphQL API, and things like that. So our focus will for the developers be really around, let's say, connecting and making sure that everything is available through the API. That's, I would say, also very generic stream. We in the last couple of weeks did a lot of those small little tweaks around it. Again, I would say almost go to the website. We have a public roadmap and have a look, and we will continue doing that. I think that the strongest, I would say, differentiator that we're going to push forward in 2022 is everything around content modeling. So we really said, like, if we want to make sure that we are the best headless CMS for, let's say, to solve content challenges for large organizations, there's a lot of improvements that we still can do on automating of content modeling, creation of groups, more segmenting of, let's say, the environments that we have, the collections that we have to create a certain level of granularity. So what you will see definitely from content specifically is a lot of new functionalities around that whole content modeling area. There's another area where we also spend a lot of time on, that's also a business area, is the assets part of the solution. So we obviously have the content models. That's like the first thing you start with when you create a headless CMS, but there's a lot of organizations that still don't have a DAM and want to use the headless CMS also for their, let's say, for their assets. Then you also need to make sure that you're not just a picture store, but that in a sense you also give the ability to those large organizations to really treat assets, pictures, videos, and things like that as a specific content model with a lot of the options that you're also able to do with normal content models. So that's another thing. So that whole experience of managing assets is also something that you will definitely see changing in the upcoming months on our roadmap. Let's then redo a little bit of the roadmap. So I'll just start from scratch. You can cut easy. So if you look at the Content by Kentico roadmap for 2022, it consists of three main areas. One is everything that we really consider as the foundation of the solution. If you have a good headless CMS, it should perform well, it should be scalable, it should be quick, fast, secure. So we have a stream that continuously improves scalability, security, and everything around that. That's really one thing. I wouldn't say really sexy, interesting new releases. I would say more continuous releases where, in a sense, our clients should not run to the limits of the solution. The second part is the developer side of life, the developer experience. And what we are doing there is we have a bit of a main topic and we have some small topics. So the small topics are that we get a lot of feedback from our developer community. We have a pretty rich development community. And they come up with small improvements in the way how they are using specific APIs, in the way how they want to access the API, to make their life easier, so that they're able, improvements on SDKs and things like that, so that they're able to quicker and better, let's say in a sense, faster deploy their applications that they want. So that's a bit of the small bits and pieces. But the large part of that is that we actually say, well, we develop a lot of functions. We developed a lot of functions. We keep developing a lot of functions. And sometimes it's we need to make sure that we also catch up and make sure that all the functionalities that we develop are available through the API. because that obviously makes it very powerful. And you sometimes saw that we made some choice to release a functionality quicker. So,
Yeah.
and the third stream is the end user experience. And with the end user experience, we have two main parts where we are working on this calendar year. One is that, and I already mentioned it, is that we really believe that there is so much improvements to do on the content modeling side of life. Okay. So we are really going to expand and improve the content modeling functionalities. Everything around that with, for example, automation, more in-depth content modeling, visualizations, you can name it. But that's one part for the business users, which we really believe will help them a lot to make life easier and work with content, be more flexible if they have new projects. And the second thing is that we also see that a lot of clients, even the bigger ones, are using content for asset management. They have digital asset management systems, but sometimes also their digital content they want to manage in a headless CMS. And we obviously started as a lot of other headless CMSs with a pretty, I would say, standard asset management. You could almost say image folder type of thing. But we already transitioned that into a more content model approach. So also an asset is a content model. We call it advanced asset management. And for us, that whole experience in, let's say, that asset management, you should be able to treat assets in a similar way as you would also treat normal content items that are based on the content model. So we make it much more richer. We added a lot of functionalities already where they can do more with assets, like cropping, rotating, not only through API, but also for the business users. So I would say that's another really important stream that we keep working on this year.
Okay, that's really cool. I look forward to seeing that come to fruition. Final question from me. If there's one thing you can change about the headless CMS industry, what would it be?
Oh, that is a difficult question.
Yeah.
I think, well, what I really believe is that the headless CMS market, and then let's talk about the whole headless market. It's still a very, let's say, scattered landscape. And I think it's really important that we really keep educating the market a lot on, let's say, why should they adopt a MEC approach or a composable architecture approach, and not only look at it from your own little silo environment. That is really old thinking, I would say, that you just look at it from your platform. But as soon as you go in, and we really try to do it also, is to try to map, let's say, the requirements and the landscape, and really try to help clients to create a bit of a roadmap of where they need to go. How can we as headless vendors help organizations in their digital transformation? And I think now it's too much rigid. It's too much focus on, let's say, CMS only, or sometimes even headless commerce only, about the product and the tool. And we need to get a bit out of that tool approach, and we need to get into that digital transformation approach. Because I see where the clients that are adopting it well, how what big of a value it is for their business, how they break out of their, let's say, that the solution or the software becomes a hindrance. It should be an enabler. And I think that the whole headless market, and also I think even also for us, we need to be much more focusing on that and ask the right questions to clients. Why do they want it? What do they want to achieve? And go from there. And then I think the market will change better. So that's probably one thing that I would say that I would love to change in the long run.
Okay. I like that. Okay. Well, Bart, we've had some technical difficulties, but it's been very much worth it. I think we've got some really good tidbits from this. So thank you so much for your time. We're going to wrap up there. Where's one place that people can go to learn more about content.ai? I suppose the website's a good place to go, right?
Yeah, I would say content.ai. We have a trial. Go and try it. If you're scared of trying, just ask for a nice demo. I think what I would really recommend people to go is not just to Content AI, but go to our resource hub, because we created a lot of content, cheat sheets, ebooks, guides, definitely not about how to implement content only. It's really about how to use headless CMS with SEO, how to let's say, use it in your how to create your content model, the cheat sheet I was talking about, the state of the market. So go to our resource hub, a lot of content that you can find, and that will help you in selecting the right product, adopting it, get the most out of it.